Good afternoon, RhinoCats, and welcome back to Reading Comprehension Monday. Like last week, we are going to be exploring reading comprehension, and comprehension just means if we understand what we're reading, if we're taking something away from our reading, which is the most important part of reading, right? We want to learn something from our reading, we want to gain information, we want to understand the author's purpose or why we're reading a text. And that's really what we explored last week. We explored our author's purpose, why we're reading a text. Are we learning something? Are we being entertained? Are we being told how to do something? Are we being influenced or persuaded to buy something? And we also explored the topic or main idea, meaning what our text is about. What is the big idea? What is my author trying to convey? What is the most important part of this text that I'm reading? So this week we are going to keep that in mind, but we are going to be practicing or focusing on chronology or chronological order. And I know that that is a big word, but all it means is basically arranging dates or events in the order in which they happened. Order of events or chronological awareness is really important because it helps us to retell a story accurately. It helps us to ask or answer those important questions about a text. And it also helps us to understand the cause and effect of events. And that's something we're going to be getting into a little bit later. But just so you know why order of events is so important, this is why. It really helps us, once again, just take away more meaning from our story. It helps us be able to retell a story, to tell it in the order in which it happened. So to describe the plot and give those details to whoever you're retelling the story to, whether that's on a test, whether that's to somebody else, whether that's just basically summarizing it for yourself to make sure you understand it. Super important that we understand the order of events and when and why they're happening. So just to practice putting things in order, I have basically laid out how you wash your hands, but I've mixed up the order in which you do it. So I want us to figure out what goes first, second, third, or fourth in the order of events of hand washing. So we have lather and scrub for 20 seconds, apply liquid soap, wet your hands, and dry your hands. So we want to figure out what comes first. So there's many different strategies that you can use to figure out what comes first. But pretty much it's really what makes the most sense, right? What are we going to start out with when we're washing our hands? Well, I know that in order to wash my hands, I first have to get them wet, right? Because soap's not going to stick to anything, and that's the whole point in hand washing. So the first thing I know that I need to do is I'm going to wet my hands. So that would go to number one. So on IXL, you may have to drag your whatever sentence or paragraph is first and put it in that number one order on that timeline. So first things first, when you wash your hands, you're going to wet them. Next up, are we going to lather and scrub for 20 seconds? Are we going to apply liquid soap? Or are we going to dry our hands? Well, I know that in order to start scrubbing my hands, I got to put soap on them. So after I wet my hands, I know I'm going to apply some soap. So I know that applying liquid soap is my second step. Now I'm down to my third step, and my options are to lather and scrub for 20 seconds or to dry my hands. And I know that in order to clean my hands, I've got to scrub them for 20 seconds before I dry them. So third is going to be lather and scrub, and then fourth is going to be dry your hands. I actually think order of events is fun because it's kind of like solving a puzzle. You're going to have to move things around and figure out what makes the most sense. So feel free to play with things, figure out What do I need to do first in order to get to that second step? What is something going to follow something? What makes the most sense? So it's really about using your common sense, guys, when you are putting things in order. So let's take a look at what our assignments are going to be today and practice what some of the things that we may see today. Once again, guys, I'm trying to make things easier for us this week, so I don't have the directions on how to get to your assignment. You can find that in the description underneath this video, but I do have the different grade level assignments you're going to be accessing. So first grade, put the sentences in order. Your direction is going to be put the sentences in order from beginning to end. So you're going to have to figure out, just like we practiced, what makes sense first, then what's going to come next logically, and then finally, what is our third step? So we have, she looked for it all day. All right, I don't know what she looked for. I'm kind of confused. So that's probably not the first sentence. Finally, she found it under her bed. All right, I have a little bit more information, but I still don't know what she's looking for. Pam lost her doll this morning. All right, now I know what's going on. So I'm going to say Pam lost her doll this morning. That's the first thing that happened, because she can't be looking for something all day unless she loses something first, right? And she's not going to find something that she hasn't lost first. So that's number one. So I would move that to the beginning. So you may have to click and move these sentences around on IXL. Next, she looked for it all day, right? You're not going to find something unless you start looking for it. So I know that that's going to be next. So first, Pam lost her doll in the morning. Next, she looked for it all day. Finally, that's also a great key word there. Finally is typically going to come at the end of something, right? If finally means it's the finale, it's the finisher, it's the last thing that's going to happen. So finally, she found it under her bed. So first, Pam lost her doll, then she looked for it all day. Finally, third, she found it under her bed. So that would be the order there. Some of you also may be asked to read a story and then put events in order based on what you read. So once again, this is just checking to see if you understood what you read. If you can go back and summarize or put in your own words what happened using events in the story. So this story says, Deb's first day of camp was a mess. It rained all morning, and then she found a spider in her bed. Now we're going to put the events in order. So did Deb first find a spider in her bed, or did it start to rain? Well, if you go back into the story, I know that the first thing that happened was it rained all morning. And then another great keyword or a clue there, she found a spider in her bed. So you would drag it started to rain to that first sequence or plot there on our timeline, and then you would drag found a spider in her bed to the second option or to the last option after it started to rain, because we know that happened second in our story, going back and looking at the story. Sometimes, guys, you have to go back and look at the story. You may not remember it off the top of your head, and that's fine. Don't make a silly mistake because you don't want to go back and read the text. And then finally, some of you may have to read a giant long paragraph in B. This is going to be you. And I didn't write it all out because I didn't even have room for it on my poster board. But basically, you'd have to read a text or a story. And these are going to be from informational texts for this particular activity, meaning that it's nonfiction, right? So it's not going to be a fairy tale. It's not going to be a made-up story. It's actually going to be historical events done by real people. So it's really important that we know how to put events that happened in history in order, right? It's really important that we're aware of what happened in the past so we can learn from it. We don't repeat it. If we're going to give you a paragraph, it may list things in the wrong order that happened in that paragraph, and you'd have to move it on the number line or the timeline, just like in second grade order events in a story. All right. So good luck with our order of events assignments, guys. All it's going to take is just some active reading. For those of you that are not reading full sentences yet, don't worry. You have an option on IXL to have these sentences read to you. So you just need to click on the speaker button. All right. Make sure you go to the description underneath this video, guys, and click on the link next to your initials to see what your activity is. Good luck, and I will be in touch later to check in.